that has so affected his life, about the person who has made the most incredible mark on his life, and his speech is entitled The Cheerleader. Help me welcome to the lectern, Jay Shah.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, and good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
On the last Friday of September, I'd like to show you a little picture. This is a very old picture, and I'm going to pass this around, and I do ask that it gets back to me in the condition I handed it out in. This is not a copy. This is my mother. Her name is Amola Shah. Your guess as to how old she is in this photo is as good as mine. And I want to start with a quote, my thought of a lifetime that came from her. "Give all your fears to the universe," end quote. She said this to me in the Himalayan foothills in March of 2019. So, a long, long time ago, but within the lifetimes of some of the people that are here today, a beautiful and amazing person was born. Her parents were good and fantastic people, but they had no idea who would come of the only child they would actually have. On September 4th, 1951, a bright star on this planet was born. This girl was charming, more than most. She was sweet, more than most. And she was beautiful, more than almost all. She was rich, and she was pampered. She would be taken to school by private drivers and had everything afforded to her. Her smile would light up the jejune worlds of those who saw it, and her laugh was too loud to be appropriate. She wrote that on a dating profile about 50 years later. "I think I laughed too loud." She was filled with mirth and with joy, and for those who had her on their side, not only were they blessed with her company, they ended up going very far in whatever they did. My father was a young man in the 1960s, much like me, younger than me, and he studied for a master's in engineering at UC Berkeley. He saw the Beatles perform live, and he was around all the hippies who talked about non-materialism and spirituality and all these sorts of ideas. Once he finished his studies, he went back to India to, among other things, find a wife. And he ended up interviewing women as if they were real estate. He wanted to find someone who was intelligent enough and good-looking enough to meet his fancy. And after interviewing 100 women, he ended up settling on my mom. He wrote decades later that only after meeting Amola did magic come into his life. The number 7, it became lucky for him. The number 13 would end up being negative. If he was faxing papers, the 13th paper would jam. If there was something going on, the 13th floor would be where the elevator stopped. Whatever, things like that. She opened the magic in his life. And they moved to America in 1974. They entered a JFK airport, and they wanted to create businesses, and they wanted to create children. And they wanted children who were educated, sophisticated, well-versed in morality, in the arts, who lived virtuous lives, and who would be fantastic additions to humanity. After living in poverty in a warehouse in Manhattan for years, where they could not even raise my eldest sister, having to send her back to India, my father, with my mother's constant support and devotion and work, created several multi-million-dollar businesses in jewelry and in real estate in New York and New Jersey. About 18 years after their marriage, their prized son they had ultimately gotten together to create was born. And when I grew up with my mom, I was so happy. I would follow her everywhere. We would go swimming together. She would take me to work, and when I was at her business, she would, instead of working, she would just feed me like a choo-choo train while I was playing computer games. She'd have a spoon, and choo-choo-choo, and then just have me open my, and put the food in, you know? And I would take my tricycle and ride all over the businesses and make all these messes and stuff. And no matter what mess I made, no matter what anything I did, it was all okay because she knew I was young, I was exploring. She loved me. She wanted to see me grow and flourish. And she treated me as if I was all she ever cared about. while also caring about many other things, including other children, a husband, businesses, other family members, and so forth. Everything I've said so far is positive, but the story had a very negative turn, which is where I suppose I stepped in a reverse sense, to do what she did for me. At the turn of the millennium, my parents got separated, and for many complicated reasons, they had a very complicated and heated divorce through many lawsuits and other things. And on Mother's Day in the year 2000, I became the man in her life. And as she would support me through school, feeding me, housing me, teaching me, giving me all of her life to make sure that I was happy, and years later, when I was big and strong, she became old and weak. And I became the one caring for her. She was diagnosed with cancer in 2016 and ultimately died in 2021. Before that, though, she supported me in starting a rock band after I saw a Bon Jovi concert. That band was very bad for several months, and we played very loud, and she just sat in the house and listened. And every day, she fed me and my bandmates. After a while, our songs got pretty good, then extremely good, and almost all these songs were created in the house where she and I both live, where I live today. Her favorite song was a song I wrote for my first girlfriend called Come On Back. And my mom was the only person to come to all 4 live performances we did in 2019. Together we saw Roger Federer play tennis. We saw Paul McCartney of the Beatles play twice. Mom was my cheerleader, musically, athletically, and romantically. In 2020, she gave me a pendant to tie around my neck to help with my romantic life. And the last lesson she imparted on me, before falling to her final illness, was to learn chivalry, because I lacked it. Her life was filled with extremely hard struggles, and she was abused by many people in her family and went through a very hellish divorce. Through all her struggles, I was there for her physically, emotionally, and spiritually. She was a mystic sort of person and a mystic cheerleader, and that's how her and her husband created a real estate and beat empire, how her 3 daughters went to Ivy League colleges, and how her son has devoted himself to the spiritual upliftment of mankind and women, following in the chivalry message she left me with. She died in 2021, but I do hope her spirit does indeed one day come on back. Hard though her life was, her life purpose was fulfilled, and now I am the cheerleader, devoting my life to being a testament to hers. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you,